any old demons or anything like that. But is there anything in particular from that time that you spent on that show that really, strikes a chord with you that you'll always remember? Something in particular that maybe that you had a hand in solving, or something that even went unsolved that you just, you still think about all the time after all this time?
Yeah, one of them really, there were a couple that I can think of that I can share with you. One of them was a solve. And then you remind me, the next one was, it was eventually solved, but it was after my time. And I'm looking up at my case files right now. I still have them in the top shelf of my office. And,
wow.
And I can't stand to think that some of those haven't been solved. But one of them that was really great, was really creepy, is there was a woman, and you might remember this story. She was in her 60s, I'm going to say. And her son-in-law used to drive past her house every day going to work, and he'd stop and have coffee with her. And he stopped in, and the door was open, her purse was on the counter, but she was nowhere to be seen. And so it just freaked him out, and he called and started an investigation. And it was about 2 weeks later into the investigation that this is the bad part, that whoever had killed her, had come back and hung her from a tree in her front yard, like in the dead of night. So the next morning, when everybody woke up, she was dead there, and she had been frozen. So she had been killed before, frozen, and hung there. And it turned out that it was a truck driver that drove down that road right in front of her house, and he had killed her, put her in the storage unit of his truck, and then when he came back by, he hung her up there. Well, the weird part of the story is, not that isn't weird enough, but there was a crumpled up note underneath her, and they ran the note. I worked from 92 until 2002, so I worked 10 years on that, and they had the crumpled up note. They showed it so people would recognize the handwriting. Well, one day, it wasn't show day. I was working. I also worked during the week to sort out everything we had to do for show day. And I was alone in the studio, and the phone rang, and I answered it. And this woman said, I'm so glad someone answered. I promised myself this was the last time I was going to even bother, because I haven't gotten any response. So I said, what are you referring to? And she brought up that case, and I immediately knew what it was. And she said, I called the first night that this aired, and this was like 8 years later. This is the upsetting part. Okay. She said, I called the first night it aired, and I told them that an operator that I recognized the writing was my next-door neighbor's writing. And because I live right across the street from the lady, and she said, I recognized, that it was her neighbor's. She lived next door to the truck driver.
Wow.
And she said, I recognized that writing, and nobody paid any attention to me. Well, that would always make me so mad, because whoever took that call really dropped the ball. They didn't, because every call goes to law enforcement. So it either was one of the operators before I got there, or it was law enforcement often just poo-pooed things away. They'd get close to retirement if they weren't a good cop and didn't care. He didn't want to finish it up. So she was right, and we started up with it right away and went out, and it was her neighbor. He was a truck driver. It was a kill list that he had left underneath there. Oh my God. And the good part is that most of the people that, not all, and he was one of them that wasn't all, but most people who are cold cases that aren't being solved, usually the perpetrator is serving time in jail for another crime, either someone else he killed or some unrelated thing. 9/10 of them are incarcerated, even though they didn't go down for that crime. So that's kind of comforting.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Robert Stack always kind of creeped me out. It almost seemed like he, it almost seemed like he kind of, would come from the side of the TV screen and then be center, or he'd come from the background and forward. They always kind of focused in on him a little weird, from what I remember. They did. Yeah, we would always say we just pulled the battery pack out of his back and hung him up on a hook at night and just got him out for the next show. But and he was the sweetest, funniest. He was nothing like he was on Unsolved Mysteries. He was just real animated and real funny and real sophisticated and really cute, and
had a great sense of humor, and he wasn't anything at all like he was there. But they were going for a mood, and how about the theme show music?
Yeah, right.
Did that freak you out?
A little bit. I've actually got some of it loaded up here. You're not going to be able to hear it through the phone system, but I'll play it for
It's really cool music.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's enough to set the theme.
In Illinois,
but yeah, the other case that was really cool was a girl that was killed driving from, I think, Wyoming to Montana, and she was stopped by a police officer for a traffic violation, and he cited her, let her go, and then she never showed up at her where she was supposed to be, and they found her stabbed to death in a river.
Ugh.
Well, of course, the officer was suspect because he's the last one that ever saw her. But they never found her car, and her license plate was Lilmis, and it was Lil Miss with a space. Well, we got more phone calls on that license every time we aired it because every state has a Lilmis, and it was people weren't paying attention which state it was from, so that we knew we were going to get inundated with calls, which was always kind of scary because you want to get off the call as fast as you can that aren't important so you don't miss the ones that are.
Yeah.
So that was a daunting task then. But that was never solved during my tenure at Unsolved Mysteries. However, I heard one day I was getting ready to go to a show or something, and I heard her name, and another show had picked that up, and it was like investigative reports or something, and they were doing the conclusion of it. Well, I sat down and watched it, and if you can believe it, this woman had called in and said she lived rurally, and she said, my neighbor had got a backhoe, and he was digging out this big hole in his front yard, and he said he was putting in a hot water heater, but it was too big of a hole for a hot water heater, and she just kept at the police until they finally came out and looked, and they dug back, and he had buried the entire car in his front yard.
Wow, that's ridiculous, you
and
know.
I was just glued to the television set because that's the bad part is you don't get wrapped up when the show was canceled. You don't get to finish, and that was that's the hard part.
You know, and Julie, I believe, you know, that in my opinion that Unsolved Mysteries was, you know, probably the first show of its kind that gained any kind of traction. And so many other shows, I mean, they have an entire, like, Ion network, you know, that's dedicated to shows like that. But none of them will ever have the same format, the same people, you know, the same show host, like Robert Stack. You know, I'm sitting here in studio right now, and we're playing some YouTube clips of it on mute, you know, and just watching him as he comes on. Yeah.
It was iconic. I'll be happy to send you guys a picture if you want, and I'll autograph it and send it in. It was an iconic show. It was, everybody loved it. Just everybody loved it. Everybody watched it.
Well, we still do. You know.
Yeah, they still do. They still do. What's unique about that show is John Cosgrove and Terry Dunn Muir are the producers of the show, and they own the show. And so what is interesting is that generally a network owns a show, and John was smart. He owns that show. So when he put it on just recently, when he had I can't think, Dennis Farina, who just passed away, who was his host for this time that he put it on most recently, he can pitch it to a network, and he owns it, and so he can pitch it to a network and run it. And what he likes to do is he likes to make enough money off that show to produce a movie, and he loves to make movies for Lifetime.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's what he does. But it's nice. It's like self-publishing a book, and then your publisher can't tell you that you can't print it anymore or what you can and can't do with it. So he was smart to own that show.
So
it's still there, and he can always bring it back if he wants.
Yeah, and who wouldn't like that? You know, I was always a fan of Dennis Farina. You know, he's in some great movies as well. Yeah, he seemed like a really cool guy. I mean, I never met the guy or anything like that, of course, but
he was very nice.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes before our next break, before we get into the third hour, and I don't want to keep you, you know, from your dinner and things like that. But yeah,
Thank you.
No, definitely thank you
Julie?
for calling. And hold on, Jay.
Julie, it's Jaybird. Once more, I'd like to thank you for coming on. And
Oh.
I did just want to let you know that I started growing a goatee this week. You got to check out my pictures and rate it. It's coming out later on the show on the Facebook site. Tell me what you think, yay or nay, okay?
I will do.
All right, thank you.
I will do. And if your readers
you.
want to see some of what we did with the Gunsmoke show, I mean, they can always check my website, which is my name, JulieAnnReam.com.
Thank you. Yes.
Or they can check out the Gunsmoke60th.com, and that they can see what we did last year for Gunsmoke.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely plug that. I'll put that up on social media later on tonight, and also I'll private message you the studio address.
And I'll send you the pictures out.
I would be honored.
I'll send you a poster on Gunsmoke, and I'll send you an Unsolved Mysteries photo.
Dude, that would be so awesome. We have a wall of fame in our studio. And we've got some people that you know. Laureen Landon. We've got Kerdulsha. I always murder her name. No,
I can say it perfectly. Kedrosha ona Karol.
Oh, jeez. Good for you.
Kedrosha.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
It's our pleasure.
Really has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great to talk to you and be a friend of the show. We'd love to talk to you more in depth. Maybe have some more time.
Oh my gosh, I have so many things going on all the time. We could talk about something different every single time. Throw in a little Unsolved Mysteries.
Call in anytime you want. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Julie Ann Ream. What do you say, guys?
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Bye, gal. Bye, gal. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Talk
Julie.
to you later.
See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye. All right, guys. Well, there you go. Julie
Cool
Ann Ream.
chick.
Definitely very cool chick.
Yeah, that was great. That was one of the better interviews that we've done.
She was actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that was great.
Dude, who doesn't love
stuff.
Unsolved Mysteries, though?
Oh,
I mean, you know what I mean? I
Come
love
on.
that show, dude. Here, let me play a little clip really quick before we do this break thing here. I got this loaded up. Here's a clip about 2 minutes into an episode where Robert Stack is going to come out of the shadows, just like he always did in the show. You ready?
I love this part.
Yeah, watch this.
It was a first overt sign that something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Barely noticed in the midst of the family's grief was the fact that a time bomb was ticking away inside of Jim Kimball. A time bomb that would explode almost 3 years to the day after his father's death.
Just freaky, man, you know?
Yeah, he was really good at freaking you out.
Yeah, he comes out of nowhere, he fades into the set.
He fades in, he's like, I'm about to tell you about some scary shit.
It was really well produced and well directed and put across.
It was. It caught your attention. That's why it did a 10-year or 12-year run, whatever it did, you know? I mean, I watched that after school at night in my apartment when I was 19, you know? I always liked that show, man. I used to...
Imagine if we go on a 10-year run.
Yeah,
dude,
we're on our way, man.
Be like, you know...
Episode
like
5,000.
10 year... Yeah.
Dude,
like 10 years from now...
Think of it like this, man. Remember, you know the saying Netflix and chill? You know, come over and do Netflix and chill or whatever?
Yeah.
Back in the day, when there was no Netflix, it was Unsolved Mysteries and chill. You know what I mean? You'd cuddle up with your girl on the couch and watch a little cable TV, a little NBC.
So hopefully in another 10 years, it'll be like, hey, you want to come
know
over and listen to the Kevin Howley show and chill?
I'm obviously a millennial of sorts. And so the big thing was, remember, and I mean, it was a big thing with everyone, but what was it? To Catch a Predator.
Love that show.
That one was awesome.
You get a bunch of perverts that are like showing up with candy and stuff.
They'd set a guy up.
We should do that, dude. That is something we could do because listen, if we just
then you and
we
Chuck
could do that as a Kevin Howley show.
Then you and Chuck would be off the show, dude.
And record them, get them coming up, you know.
To the studio?
And then we interview him on the show.
Hey, come on, man. Welcome to the Kevin Hawley Show, you pervert.
Yeah.
Have a seat. Is that candy for Pops?
No, but you want to talk about national exposure, dude. If we did something like this and just did some asinine stuff with some predators and had Camden sitting on the computer talking to like a 40, acting like he was a 16-year-old girl.
We'll dress Camden up in a diaper or a dress or something and have him just sitting in here to greet the dudes when they come in.
No.
Oh, my God.
No. We just got to put an ad out for, like, you know, a young chick looking for an older guy. It's Camden sitting there. It's not illegal, right? Because he's not a younger chick. He's not seeking. He's looking for an older person, right? I mean, I'll do it. I'm not
I mean,
gonna,
no, it's not
I'll
illegal.